It's the beginning of 2024, and I believe that human beings are now divided into two fundamentally separate camps. In the first camp are people who believe that our everyday collective human behaviors, eating, building, manufacturing, selling, buying, transporting, that our everyday collective human behaviors have pushed many of the planet's fundamental life support systems to the brink of collapse. In the second camp are people who don't believe this. In the second camp are people for whatever reasons, right? Some of them may be profiting directly from many of the things that are pushing the living systems to collapse. And many, many, many more may just be so busy getting by in life or even trying to survive in life that they don't really have time to pay much attention to this. But for whatever the reasons, generally speaking, in the second camp are human beings who believe things are basically okay, that there are huge problems in the world in different places. There always have been, there always will be. But the way humans are going about things, generally speaking, is still a supportive enough situation. Will still be able to sustain itself into the future. All the making and the manufacturing and the buying and the human population and all the rest of it is still a fundamentally supportable situation. Two separate camps. So we could talk about these two separate camps in many different ways, but let's bring in a concrete example. So let's say I said, now I was born in 1963, and let's say I said to somebody who still believes that things are, pretty much good enough, pretty much as good as we can get them, and things can go on like they have been for into the future, right? And maybe they don't believe this strongly. Maybe they're just overwhelmed by life circumstances and they don't even really have all that much time to think about it. Either way, I say to somebody who fits this general description, since I was born, everyday human activities have killed off 70% of the animals in the wild. In other words, not livestock, cows and chickens and pigs, and also not pets, but the animals that are wild, that just live on Earth the way they've lived for millions and tens of millions of years. Everyday human activities have killed off 70% of them, over 2/3 of them, since I was born. What might their response be? I'd imagine it would go something like, wow, really? That's really sad. That's too bad. Wow, that's a lot. And what are you going to do? It is what it is. It is what it is. All right. So in other words, you're going to fold in something like this. You're going to fold in climate change. You're going to fold in the endemic loneliness and separation and anxiety of so many human beings. You're going to fold all these things in and sort of make it okay in some way. Okay, now let's say I said the same thing to somebody in the first camp. We've killed off 70% of the wild animals, tigers and foxes and fish and elephants and rhinos and wolves and bears and mountain lions and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've killed 70% of them off just mostly by the way now 8 billion humans go about living on Earth. I'm in the first camp, if you haven't guessed, and my personal response is that just about cracks my soul. It just about breaks me. To even begin to look at that just about breaks me in two. And so mostly I'm going to have to choose not to look at it that closely or that often, because my heart, my body, my soul, whatever that might be, can't support that. And by the way, some part of me also understands that the same human actions that could have killed off 70% of the wild animals since I was born, those same actions must also be not supportable by our Earth on the widest pictures, on the life support system pictures. It just makes too much sense. Okay, two separate camps. Now, the people in the second camp, the people who, for whatever reason, are still buying into or even taking advantage of the way things are right now, the way they've been for a long time now in most pockets of the world. In a way, they're lucky, right? I mean, I know a lot of humans have it really, really hard right now, but at least the resources of our world, from educational, cultural, employment, political, almost all the resources that exist now in the world have been created by and for the second camp, the beliefs that are in place in the second camp. So if you're in that second camp, it's not all that difficult to find resources of some kind to support your outlook. Now, you may be not lucky enough to have access to those resources, and that's a whole different heavy conversation. But there's still that fundamental belief in the resources and the stories that the way humans collectively are doing things is still the best we can do. What are you going to do? And it should be sustainable into the future. Okay? But the first camp, which is, I believe, a much smaller group of human beings still at this point, where do people in the first camp go for resources, cultural resources, educational resources, psychological resources, just social resources? Where do they go for resources that buttress and support and feed and nourish what they believe in the world? Because we all need that, right? We need social resources to support and to share among other humans and other animals and plants and so forth as well. Or we become what? We become removed, right, from life, and we become removed from ourselves. And so the next video, I want to consider together with you how we might begin to create resources for people in the first camp who are basically, at least I'll just speak for myself, walking around with what feels like broken souls. I mean, it goes that deep. And yet at the same time, if we have enough of the second camp resources, and I have a decent amount of those, we're still able to sort of pass, right? We're passing in life. From outward appearances, we're doing okay. We're getting by, right? What are you going to do? We can still pull that off. But on a deeper level, on a maybe somewhat unspoken level, we're not pulling it off. We're not pulling it off at all. And we sure as hell could use more resources so that we can stop trying to pull off something that our heart and our souls are not behind.